everyone. Welcome to whatever episode we're on.
Episode Ian.
Episode Ian. There we go. We're just going with names now. Episode Ian of the Zero Fucks, Zero Effects. Once again, got no fucking clue what we're called. Podcast. With us today, we have, I think he's sometimes referred to as Mafia Murphy, especially by Lisa Forte. So Mafia Murph, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, yes, of course. My name is Ian Murphy. I am founder of CyberOff, and I have nothing to do with the Mafia whatsoever. The horse's head was nothing to do with me. I'd just like to put everybody straight on that score. I have no idea where Shergar is.
Ian, at least half our viewers wouldn't know who Shergar is.
Every day's a school day, Rob. They can go and fucking look it up then, can't they?
Wow.
There we
It's gonna
go.
be one of those episodes, is it?
Yeah. Well, we have got the funniest man in InfoSec on the podcast today.
We have. Yeah, so we'll introduce him later, Ian. Don't worry.
Yeah, good. What time's he turning up?
Warm up.
I'm happy being the warm up. I'm happy. Just it's like fluff, and I'll be happy just to be on set. I'll be quite honest with you.
Oh my lord!
How much of this are you going to have to edit, Rob? I think there's going to be a lot of editing.
I think there's not, and at least one career could be ending soon.
But listen, if you're talking about my career fucking ended years ago, by the way.
I'm actually talking about
Ended
mine.
years ago.
So, thanks so much for joining us, Ian. As usual, I have not written any questions down, so I'm just going to pull some out the top of my brain. So you have a really interesting approach to security awareness training. Do you want to tell us a bit about how you incorporate comedy into it and kind of why that works?
I think for me, why it works is throughout my life, comedy and humor has been a constant. And I'm not saying that I'm funny or anything like that, but growing up in Liverpool in the 80s, through mass unemployment and all of that type of stuff, if you didn't laugh, it would have been a terrible existence. And I had the best childhood in the world. You know, I grew up in a time where kids were allowed to go out and play in the street and all that type of good stuff. But it was all about the wit, and it was all about the humor, and it was all about trying to outdo all your friends. And for me, whenever I remember anything from my past, I always remember the stuff that was fun from my past. There's dark times in my past, of course, which I don't like to focus on, but the fun stuff. Just I always say to people, who was the best teacher you had at school? Nobody ever goes, it was the teacher who battered me, because we had sadists teachers back at school in the 80s Liverpool Comprehensive who took beating to a whole different level type of thing, especially the games teachers. But it's the fun teachers. Whenever you say to somebody, who's the best teacher? It's the fun teacher. It's the teacher who made the lessons fun, and you learnt more. And for me, it was a music teacher called Mr. Vaughan. Didn't do anything in music. His lessons were just brilliant, though. And again, if somebody says to me, what's your favourite film? Or I can recite almost The Life of Brian, start to finish. And because it was fun, because it was interesting, because it got me engaged. And I think that's the bit about awareness that we do a disservice to people by thinking, oh, this isn't a corporate image, or will I look bad if I put this type of content out, or will I offend Dave or Susan because somebody said fuck in the video? I mean, come on. You'll go to the cinema and watch a lot worse than that type of stuff, Mm-hmm. So I think when we keep falling for the same type of scams, and we always will because we're built to do that, I think we do people a disservice by not trying to educate in a slightly different way, bring something different in, treat our colleagues and friends as adults and not as kind of required reading who require a kind of Mary Whitehouse type figure. Again, kids, go and look Mary Whitehouse up. A Mary Whitehouse type figure to be a puritanical censor and turn around and go, oh, I don't think, somebody may get offended at that. But so fucking what? Who cares? Who really cares? It's an emotional reaction for something. And if you're not really, if you're not setting out to offend people and the context is there, and actually you're not singling people out, you're not that's why I always make me the butt of the jokes in the videos. That's why it's me who's the idiot. Then you're golden. You're on safe ground, right? The way people react to it, and an emotional reaction, you can't control that. So I don't know. I don't know why people try to do that by being that gatekeeper. But then they don't mind if somebody clicks on a link and puts their company in danger, because the training I've had has been a bit boring and people switch off and they're not engaged and all that type of stuff. So that's where the humor comes from, and that's why I use it, and I'm unapologetic for it as well, even when people get upset. And it's only very few. I can count on the fingers of one hand the amount of people who've been upset at my videos, and it's always been for their misreading of the context and their emotional reaction. It's never been for anything I've done or said.
It's almost like you give zero fucks. So it's like,
oh, as if by magic. Again, kids, go and look that phrase up. Listen, all you're getting here is 80s pop culture. You're getting nothing else, right? That's all you're getting.
Gets a job.
I love that.
I can do that. I can do that. Brilliant. Again, go look Boys from the Black stuff up. Great series, totally underrated. Anyway.
So, Ian, your humor is very much you. Do you engage with the people who object to what you're doing? Do you talk to them and try to?
Yeah, always. I get deeply upset if I think I've offended anybody deliberately or kind of accidentally, right? If somebody goes, "Hey, you said this, blah blah blah." However, what I quickly learn when I start to engage them and say, "Hey, I'm sorry, I didn't mean blah blah blah," is that they are more often than not a moron. So they are a moron who don't have a sense of humor, and they've taken it the wrong way. So then when I try and change, I'm not even trying to change the opinion, trying to explain where I come from, they're deeply entrenched in their anger. And actually, some of them are my best viewers, because they get really angry. Instead of switching off and going, "Oh, switch off," they watch it through to the end. It's a weird thing. It's like Yoda and Darth Vader. It's like hate leads to anger, anger leads to the dark side. People love being angry all the time. So I do reach out to make sure I haven't inadvertently overstepped the line, right? And once I'm kind of confident that that's the case and I'm dealing with an idiot, then I leave them to it, because they're always going to beat me with experience, right?
So may I just say, stay tuned for something really offensive coming up soon.
Brilliant.
I find that quite a lot with the content that I put out on like LinkedIn and stuff, though, because I swear sometimes on LinkedIn. And I know, weird, isn't it? But I do find that some people really, really fucking hate it, and I'm like I quite like being a divisive figure.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure I do it to be divisive. But also there's some shits and giggles in that as well from time to time. When I do get somebody who takes my video the wrong way and they become a bit trolly with me, the trolley as in troll Y on the end. So they're trying to troll me. I kind of then go the other way and try and kill them with kindness. So I'll offer them cuddles and stuff like that, and so it's even like part of my stand-up that I've just started. I know how I'm going to handle my first heckler. I know how it's going to be done. I don't care what they say to me, but I'm going to get them up on stage and give them a cuddle and have a photo taken, because they'll be my first heckler. And you can't ever come back from that, right? If a comedian's going to turn around and go, "Come and have a cuddle. Come on, come and have a cuddle," the heckler's going to go, "Oh, fuck, I can't say I've shagged his mum now, right?" It's just... And anyway, but yeah, I kind of swear, because it's my character, right? It's how I've been brought up, and I don't see it as a lack of vocab. In fact, I kind of like to think I'm an intelligent person. I don't care who else doesn't think that, but and I see it as an expression of authenticity for me, because if you're having a pint with me, I'll be that person that you see on LinkedIn. It won't be an act, because if you've seen my videos, I can't act, right? So it won't be an act. It will be me I just kind of amplify it a little bit on LinkedIn, just for the effect and things like that. So I don't get offended at swearing at all. I love it. I really do. It's why my company's called Cyber Off, because I couldn't call it Fuck Off Limited, right? so I had to, and cyber is such a weird term, right? It means absolutely nothing. And I almost think it was like a bunch of security geeks in a room who couldn't get laid, trying to think, how do we make ourselves sound a little bit more exciting than we are? Let's call ourselves Cybermen. Yeah, that'll work. We'll get laid then. No, you won't. You're still geeks, right? So it's almost like a thumb in the nose up to the industry to call myself Cyber Off, to turn around and go, come on, people, let's be human about shit and let's have a laugh, you know. Yeah. And let's not take ourselves seriously. And hey, look, if I know I'm Marmite, if people don't like it, that's all right. Switch off, go and watch somebody else. I don't give a shit.
But it's really peculiar, isn't it, Ian? I mean, before we actually started recording, I said to you that my biggest hate, I mean, purely coincidentally, my biggest hate is business speak, where people talk absolute crap bollocks when it means nothing, but it's a whole load of words that have come out this week's vocabulary pot. And people are more inclined to join in with that than they are with somebody who's being honest and open and speaking English, albeit colloquial. And it makes no real sense at all that people will sit there and nod their heads sagely when people are talking, you know, let's put it up the flagpole and see if it, oh, shut up. I mean,
what's a shite?
Yeah, somebody referred to me the other week at work. Somebody said, oh, Rob's taking point on this. Touch base with him and see where he's at. Well, I put back in the messaging stream, I said, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Oh, dear.
Let me know if I can help.
I hate that. I hate people who say reach out. My mum actually said the word synergy in an actual sentence the other day, and I was like, this was like just about dinner or something. I was like, what the fuck is going on with you? It's not even work related. It's seeping into your actual life now.
It's weird. I mean, that goes back to a famous Bill Shankly quote for me, being a Liverpool supporter. You know, Bill Shankly once said, I like to speak proper English, he said, and I'm doing a terrible Scottish accent. I fully understand that. And he said, if I see somebody on the pitch who's not giving the ball to other players, he said, I don't call them avaricious. He said, I call them bloody greedy. And it's true, right? You know, and I think the love that the people had for Bill was because he was a man of the people who spoke about the people. And I think when people talk about synergies or let's touch base or reaching out, I think they're just trying to fit into a business environment where actually, if they were in the pub, nobody would turn around to the mate and go, hey, listen, reach out to the barman and get us a drink and let's touch base with the man over there to see if we can have a gin and tonic. Nobody, what they turn around to say is, get the round in, dickhead. You know, that's it. It's quite simple like that. And I think something's lost when we try and portray somebody who we're not. Within a business, because it's almost like being duplicitous, right? It's almost like just that two-facedness that you'll say one thing in a corporate environment and say something totally else outside it, which probably explains why I work for myself, because nobody else would ever employ me.
Oh, I feel that pain, Ian. Although I'm now employed by other people, I don't think they've worked it out yet. Although they might now, having watched this. Maybe I won't edit this. Okay, come back to that again. Feel your pain, Ian. But from us, I mean, Amy and I are both, albeit tenuously, from a sales perspective, and it's very true that people would much prefer us to talk crap in a sales environment than be honest.
Well, to be fair, I try to surround myself with customers who don't want me to do that. Like,
no, but yeah, you've built a following of people who like Amy, the real Amy.
Hopefully,
both of them. Which is two more than me. I
think there is a culture of that, but I mean, I had a sales manager before, and he was like, you need to try and fit in with your customers and be a chameleon. And if they're talking about listening to things, then you'd be like, hear this, like, and doing all this fucking psychology bullshit. And I was like, you know what? No, I don't need to do any of that. If I just talk to people how I am and stop trying to put a fucking act on all the time, I think I'll probably have a lot more success. And if you don't like me, that's your kind of problem. It's not my problem. There's like a billion other people on the planet I can go talk to. So if you don't want to buy off me, that's totally fine.
But that's it. You choose to work with the people you engage with. So you don't want to engage with people falsely, and you don't want to engage with false people.
Yeah.
Well, I agree, and I think people can see through it, and the sales jobs I've done in the past, even though people want you to portray a corporate image, it's always ever been me doing the presentation. It's never been, so somebody will show me how to do the presentation or deliver it, or here's the lines you have to say, but it will always be me delivering it in my voice, the way I do it, and whether people like that or not, or whether people buy from me or not because of that, it's kind of, I don't want to sell to a customer that is then going to turn around and say, hey, those videos, could you just take that swear word out of them? Or could you just, no, I fucking can't. No, I can't. Because actually, if you want that, you want a bespoke video, I'll do your bespoke video. It'll take ages. It'll cost you a fucking arm and a leg. And you won't enjoy the output at the end because you will have reduced it down so far that there's no comedy in it whatsoever. So, crack on doing your shitty videos that you see so thinks is really funny, but just nobody else does. It's kind of and I'm all right with that. It's taken me ages to be comfortable with myself, because I think people talk about imposter syndrome all the time, right? As if it's a badge of honor and stuff like that. But I think for me, it's been that kind of thing, but chip on the shoulder, Scouser syndrome, for a very long time. I've just turned 50 and I'm kind of confident with myself a little bit more that if people don't like me, that's all right, because there's a bunch of other people that do like me, and there's a bunch of other people that do follow me. And actually, the only real opinions that matter are my wife and my son and my dad and my mother-in-law and all the people, and my friends, the people that are closest to me, because opinions are like arseholes. Everybody's got one, right?
Yep.
Can't argue with that.
No.
Can you imagine the bleep machine if this was going out? There'd just be a massive bleep. It's like, oh no, the TV's gone on the blink again.
Yeah, well, to be fair, most episodes do have quite a lot of swearing in. Mostly from me, though. I think you're the only person who's outsworn me so far, Murph.
Could you imagine an episode if me, you, and Eliza were on as well? Then how much it would just be one constant high-pitched beep. Dogs for miles around would be running from the house. Just to...
Yeah, pretty much. So, Ian, you obviously do security awareness training. Is that what you've always done? What's kind of your background?
No, it isn't actually. I've been in security about 30 years. I started in the early 90s with the Ministry of Defence, so I did 10 years with those guys on interesting stuff. I then left because the pay was shit, and I went into the dot-com bubble in 2000, where I worked for a small consultancy where we managed to drink our way through the investment that we had, which was a wonderful year for me. It was a great time to be in London, and then I wormed my way into Symantec as a firewall guy, and then moved into MSS from there. And then in about 2006, I became self-employed. So I did contracting then. And since then, I've been doing contracting of all different sorts, 27001 and class consultancy and risk assessments and security architecture. And so I have a technical background. But I did have a year in Australia in between where I worked for Die Data out there as their kind of regional business sales security person type thing, and which was great as a kind of break from the norm. But it did cement for me that I can't work for people, especially people who I kind of don't respect. And I don't mean that from a bad point of view, but I mean people who are telling me how to do a job that I've been doing for years and telling me that I need 10 meetings a day and I need to do this to hit my number. I'm like, no, I fucking don't. No, I don't. No, I know how this works, you know. So yeah, and then a couple of years ago, Lisa asked me to get involved with Lisa Forte asked me to get involved with the cyber volunteers for COVID. And I was heading up the threat intel team, and we were putting out the same kind of newsletters every month. You know, don't click on this. Don't. I just thought to myself, there's got to be a better way, right? There's got to be a better way than telling people not to click on stuff, because you know, I know I need to eat less junk food and go to the gym. I don't do it. So there's got to be a better way to get people involved in not doing the stuff that could potentially harm them or harm the business. And that's kind of then when I thought, well, you know, let's try a different approach. Let's look at security awareness training as it is. And I don't mean the technical stuff like phishing tests and stuff like that, because that still screws with my mind. It doesn't quite compute how that's helping people by tricking them. Anyway, that's a different conversation altogether. And I thought, you know, what's the best way I've found to learn, as I mentioned earlier on, and the best way was with humor and was with fun. So I started out with kind of videos to raise my brand and find my voice on a social media platform, which was like June time last year. And then round about February this year, it got to a point where people were getting interested in it. People wanted to pay me money for it, damn fools. And so I incorporated CyberOff as a business and started to push through with it, you know, and started to develop more videos, more interesting stuff. And now with the latest iteration, it's to do stand-up for people as well. So to make the on-site training a little bit more engaging by having, you know, some stand-up type routines around passwords, around phishing, around scams, around physical dangers, all that type of stuff to help people retain the info, and make it a bit more different than the boring mandatory annual training that people just do not look forward to, you know. And that's it. It's not rocket science, right? It really isn't. I think I can make people learn better by using humor. I don't need a doctorate to know that, right? I don't need. So certain people scoffed at me in the very beginning. Well, humor only takes you so far, and they had, you know, more qualifications that I could shake a shitty stick at. And I'm like, you know what? I don't need to jump off the White Cliffs of Dover to know that gravity is going to fucking end it for me, right? I know humor can help people learn. I don't need a fucking doctorate to tell me that. And actually, I then don't need some arsehole who thinks they're much better than I am trying to talk down to me about it. You know, behavioural this and behavioural that. Fuck that. Make people laugh, get them engaged, and you got half a fucking chance. Then come in with all the behavioural and science nonsense after that, right? You know. By the way, I say science nonsense. I'm a big science geek. I love Brian Cox. Who doesn't love a bit of Cox, right? I love Brian. There's a little euphemism joke for you there. I love all of that stuff. So I'm not decrying science or anything like that. I'm a big science geek. It's just that when people try and do it to belittle other people, which is what I felt at that time, and when a few people turned around and went, "Yeah, you can't do that because of X, Y, and Z," I'm like, "Yeah, those two are for you."
I think it's really interesting how, like, you're using different, like, it's just different methods of communication. It's just what works for the masses. It's like the kind of crap that we post on LinkedIn. I can post a really, well, not in, I'm going to say a really interesting blog, but they're probably not that interesting, the ones that I write. But I can post a blog on LinkedIn that'll be, I don't know, about like something technical, not too technical because, you know, it's me, but it gets like zero engagement. People don't interact with it. But if I post a meme about passwords, they get like 20,000 views and people are commenting on it and stuff. And it's like, that's, I think, especially in the like technological era or whatever it is that we're in, where information's got to be consumed really quickly because people get fucking bored. having that kind of style where you can convey a message quickly or humorously, I think that's like becoming increasingly important, especially as like, and especially I think with all of us working from home as well and not being in that corporate environment where you're not constantly, you know, wearing a fucking suit. You're sat there with a Superman t-shirt on and I've got a fucking Ramones top on. Like, this is how I do my calls with customers. We're becoming less corporate as a industry, I think, anyway. So I think, yeah, that kind of humorous style naturally lends itself to kind of how we're developing.
I think so. It's not the only style, by the way. I mean, there's lots of other good stuff out there, and you need a layered approach like anything else. So I'm not saying mine's the only style, go for it. Everybody else's is shit. Mostly everybody else's is shit, by the way. I'm not saying that. There is that layered, but I really do think, and it's like you say about LinkedIn posts, right? So what I've noticed recently that unless I'm offering a good news story of rags to riches, right? Or unless I'm helping a homeless chap who stinks of piss and stuff like that, right? By giving him a coffee and my kid went up and took a photo. I was like, fucking, that did not happen. It did not happen. Stop lying. You're doing it for likes, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'd rather have a post that had 1,000 views for my authenticity than a bullshit post that had 1 million views for somebody else's fucking story.
Yeah.
You know, shame on you for copying that shit. You know, I don't mean shame on you guys, but shame on the people for copying that shit just for likes and reach, you know. Be authentic, have a voice. Doesn't matter whether 4 people look at it. If those 4 people are your buying target, you've got 4 leads. The other posts that do really well, that are like 1 million and stuff like that views, and you know, I've had a couple of those, but I get less pleasure out of that than the posts where people. I had a guy the other day say to me, he said, I showed my wife your vanilla AIM password wrap, and she's gone out and bought a password manager without even telling me. I'm like, brilliant, my work's done here. You know, I didn't ask her to go and do that. I don't get any revenue from it. But my work's done because somebody has found it useful enough to go and change their behavior. You know, and I think that's it. In the very early days, I used to get fed up with people writing NSFW on my posts, and I was trying to work out what it was first. I was thinking non-smoking foxtrot wanker. I didn't know, you know, and I was like, I don't want to make it safe for work. I want to make it. I want to make it so people get something out of it, you know. And the attention bit is important because these things are a boon and ruin our lives at the same time because our attention is elsewhere. I'll go out for a meal with my wife and I'll see couples on these stupid things, not talking to each other, losing the art of communication. And I want to go over and stick them in bowls of water. The phones, not the couples. I want to go and stick them in bowls of water and say, lift your head up and talk to your fucking partner, for crying out loud, you know? Have a conversation. And I think because people's attention is so waning and really moves from one thing to another, I think that's where the humor helps. And I think that's where you got to grab attention. So that's why I do stupid videos where I'm dressed up in stupid costumes and things like that, is to help grab that attention. So people are seeing something slightly different, you know? And it's no more, it's no more than that. It's trying to grab that real estate of their eyes for 5 minutes so I can switch them on to something and hopefully they'll remember it and then they can go about the day then. I don't want to give them quizzes or anything like that because, to be quite honest, it's bullshit as well.
Bong! Here's the news. First up in business news, a Yorkshire-based startup company headed by 2 village idiots and a wise investor is set to take the market by storm. Capture the Talent ensures that hiring of penetration testers is independently verifiable, using various technology to verify if a candidate is either hot or not. Stay tuned in the coming weeks for more information. Next up, the story that the government have introduced the Product Security and Telecoms Infrastructure Bill today, which bans manufacturers of IoT devices from having universal default passwords, as well as forcing firms to be transparent with known vulnerabilities in their products. Incidentally, we found out this by hacking Boris's email using password 1. And finally, the InfoSec Challenge is coming to its final stage this week as the 26 InfoSec professionals who have walked virtually to Australia and back land back in the UK on the 30th of November. The team, made up of InfoSec noobs and veterans, have been tirelessly stepping since 1st of June this year to raise money for the Innocent Lives Foundation and the Cyber Helpline. Check out infostep.uk for how you can donate to the cause. You stay secure, InfoSec community.
There we go. That was the news.
So just winding back a little bit, Ian, you were talking about NSFW, which I always thought was numpty scouse fuckwit.
Yeah. Now that makes sense.
That does make more sense if they were only writing on Ian's post.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
bastard. People have been insulting me for years and I haven't gone back to them.
Oh, phew! I was getting worried. I hadn't insulted our guests, and I was thinking we were running out of time. But
there we go. You've managed it.
Squeezed it in.
Yeah. So before the news, you mentioned you don't like phishing exercises because they just catch people out. I actually I hinted at this in a blog post that I wrote the other week, where I had a job where the CTO would do phishing exercises for our company, but he'd do them from his own email address. And then he'd be like, caught you out with this phishing exercise. And I'm like, well, not really. You got fucking, if this was a real life situation, you got fucking hacked. You're not catching me out with a phishing exercise. It's you that got caught out if this was a real life situation. And I spoke to a customer the other day and he was talking about he was doing a phishing exercise and they were going to be like, if you clicked on this link, then you have to go and do this online training or whatever. But I was like, maybe you should count how many people are actually reporting the fact that they've clicked on something rather than telling them they have to go do training because they've clicked on something. Because if phishing is done properly, it works. Like we said, it's meant to work. Like that's the whole fucking point of it. You are meant to click on it.
Yeah.
So you need to work. I always think you need to do damage limitation. But the only way you're going to limit the damage if someone's handed over some credentials on a phishing website is if you fucking know about it. Because otherwise, it could be like 6 months down the line when them credentials get used.
I agree. There's several companies who've made the news for shitty phishing attempts, right? Where I think Southwest Trains or Southeast Trains did it, for their staff for working hard through the pandemic. Hey, here's a bonus. Click on the link. I mean, what kind of arsehole does that? That's entrapment by any other language, right? GoDaddy did it as well. They did a similar bonus scheme I can get anybody to click on a link doing that type of stuff, right? That shows me nothing and it gives them no learning whatsoever. I think if you do it in a trusted environment where everybody knows there's no penalty for it, where everybody knows you're not going to clickers jail or whatever, so you have to do this training to get out of it. And I think where it's a supporting, trusting, inclusive community where people are then sharing, hey, I spotted this, and the people who report it get some kind of award or recognition. I think that's something different, right? There's merit in helping people understand what a phishing email looks like, but I think if you do it too often and you exhaust, it's almost like selling with fear, right? If you're going to sell with fear all the time, you're going to exhaust your customers. You're going to exhaust yourself trying to sell with this fear all the time as well. But you're going to exhaust your customers, and there's just something slightly wrong that I'm going to deliberately phish my team and then castigate them afterwards, which is what a lot of people, because, with great power comes great responsibility and all that type of jazz. And I see very few people using it responsibly. I do get the case for it. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, never do it. I do get the case for it, but it has to be done in an environment where people feel safe to make a mistake. And unfortunately, that's not many environments, to be quite honest. How many times have we heard people are the weakest link, or let's build a human firewall? That's akin to a human shield. Who wants to be a fucking human shield for anybody, right? Who wants to take a bullet in the head because the technology is shit? Get the technology working first. You spent hundreds of thousands of pounds on it. Get that working, and if it doesn't, dump the fucking vendor and get a decent bit of technology instead. Instead of blaming us.
I did a talk about this in Manchester a couple of weeks ago, where I was like, I'm so fed up of people being called the weakest link when they're fucking not. Like, I was in my talk, I was like, so Janet, who does the invoicing, her job is to do the fucking invoicing. That's all she's concentrating on. She's just doing the invoicing. If someone manages to get her credentials and get onto her machine, you've got a shit password policy, clearly. Or you've got nothing, you've got no technology in place to stop phishing emails coming through. That's not Janet's fault. If you've got no multi-factor authentication enabled, that's not fucking Janet's fault either. If someone gets onto Janet's machine and then manages to fucking get domain admin, again, how the fuck is that Janet's fault? It's not her fault. Like the only bit that I said something like they're not the weakest link, they're just the fucking entry point. No one ever blames the firewall when something happens, which is your other the other bit of your perimeter, your technology, like that's the technology to get into the outside world, right? No one ever blames the firewall. So why do I always blame the end user? It's not the end. I always think it's not the end user's fault. That they just happen to be like they're just the garden gate that people can walk through. But if you haven't got shit in place, it's not their problem, is it?
Yeah, and it becomes a get out of jail free card for the technology vendors who are spunking all of their VC money on marketing instead of developing a product that's solid, right? Because they want to be first to market, they want to have an MVP and blah, 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 all of that nonsense, and please shareholders and stuff like that. It's very rare that you find a security vendor that cares so much about their customers that they want to protect them, because really, in reality, they've got to sell shit to make the investors happy and to hit their targets and all that type. So there's loads of big vendors out there who've had hundreds of millions of dollars and still not turning a profit in investment. And yet they're still peddling the same shit they were 4 or 5 years ago, and people still fall for it. People still fall for this stuff. That's a scam in and of itself, right? Get that shit sorted out first. Start treating your people like adults instead of, I don't think you'd like this video. You might be offended, and then you may have half a chance. Yeah, it's not rocket science or rocket surgery, as I like to say.
Rocket surgery, definitely something we should all be in.
Yeah, I'm down with rocket surgery.
Yeah. It's very irritating though when the weakest link is able to bring down such immense systems. It would, by its very definition, it's suggesting that it's all to Cock or Brian, as I think I'm now going to refer to it.
That's the scientist. Obviously, it's not the actor in Succession I'm talking about. I don't think he knows anything about science, to be quite honest. That Scottish Brian Cox. But
yes, of course, there's two Cocks that I'm very into.
Exactly. There you go. Writes itself. You don't need me at all.
No.
Don't need me at all.
No, I think that's a really good point though. Like if you're saying your entire organization can get brought down by one fucking phishing email. Or by one user clicking, by
one user who's the weakest link.
One click of a button. That's
very little. Well, it's the F12 syndrome all over again.
The weird thing is that we're conditioned, and even more so our kids, right, are conditioned to click links from a very, very early age. A very early age. No doubt Maggie is au fait with how to operate an iPad without really being shown it, right? She knows the Zoom and all of that.
She tries to push the TV because she thinks the TV's fucking
brilliant.
In their world.
I love that. Hopefully with painted fingers, so it's just got that would be
4-year-old children don't need paint on their fingers. They're so naturally grubby.
Just not on them, not usually. That's what we normally go for.
But that conditioning is there. So when people accidentally click a link that is malicious, again, we're conditioned to do it. And anthropologically speaking, we are conditioned to trust and to help. That's how societies are built. That's how we became the dominant Homo sapiens species amongst all the other Homo erectus and Neanderthals and all. And it's why we conquered the globe, because we could trust each other and we could build societies. And actually, when somebody sends you a link and says, hey, I need 300 quid because my bills aren't being paid, your first thought is, I'm gonna help me mate, or I'm gonna help me mum, or whatever. I'm not gonna phone them up and check that that's them. It's 300 quid. I've got it in the bank. I'm gonna give it to them. So that's why these scams work, you know. And I think we need to give ourselves a bit of a break about it. I think we need to cut ourselves a little bit of slack, and just go, fucking, I made a mistake. And let's kind of learn from it, you know.
We've talked about this before on previous episodes, but the whole trust issue is a big part of this. And I don't want to spend my life not trusting everyone and everything I come into contact with, because that's not how I want to be. I want to be open, I want to be transparent, and I want to assume that everyone I bump into is similarly going to be open, honest, and transparent. And yes, I know that means I'm going to get stung every now and then.
Yeah,
but to counter that, I put in mitigating systems. So yes, I will use my card in public, but I will also ensure that there's nothing in my account, which is easy.
It's easy for me.
No problem with that. I just buy stuff. Oh my God, there's some money in my account. Buy something. So yeah, but I think it's important that we don't close ourselves off from society, as you point out. If our reaction to everything is no, then we become insular and isolated and miserable.
Well, it's like the most secure computer is one that's fucking switched off. It's not connected to anything. There's nobody using it. There you go. It's secure, but you can't live life like that. You have to get shit done.
Yeah, and unfortunately, our industry gives us an unhealthy paranoia, right? Our industry makes us look for the angles all the time. You know, what's the angle? What's the threat? What's the risk? But essentially, we do that in normal life as well, right? We just don't realize we're doing it. When we're crossing the road, we make a risk-based decision whether it's safe to cross or not. And we've had that from a very early age. When for me in the 80s, it was the Green Cross Code man, right? Dave Prowse, Darth Vader. You know, look, stop, look, and listen, all those bits and pieces. So until you're of an age where your parent can let go of your hand and you can cross the road by yourself, you know. So all of that becomes a learning experience. And I think the problem with cyber or the field is that we've almost jumped into a field without that learning experience, right? We get people coming into that field because it's lucrative for them, and there's no. I'll use the term apprenticeship, but I did 2 apprenticeships as a kid. I did a mechanical apprenticeship and I did one in a dockyard as well when I was with the Ministry of Defence, and they were the best years of my life, because actually they were learning from experienced people, and they were learning from people who've got the scars to talk to you about why you do it that way and why you don't do it that way. And I think there's something lost in society today when kids go to, and I include my son in this as well, who's 19, kids go to university straight from school and don't come out of university till about 24, 25, 26, 27, if they're doing MSCs and stuff like that. So into their mid to late 20s, they're not dealing with adults really in a peer-to-peer relationship, you know. And I think one of the biggest things I got from my apprenticeship was how to talk to adults in a peer relationship, and how to respect those adults in that peer relationship. Because woe betide you if you didn't, right? I won't tell you some of the things that happened in my apprenticeship, but people would be getting sacked for it now, and you couldn't get away with it now. And I'm not saying bring those days back. I'm not saying that. But I also do, sometimes it happens on social media. It's one of the reasons I come off Twitter, to be quite honest, because everyone's a fucking expert on Twitter. And I get kids coming at me for certain things I put on there and without the context. And I always remember a story a welder once said to me in my apprenticeship. Jack, his name was, close to retirement. He was in his 60s. And he had a big arc welding machine that had no numbers on it. And if you know how to weld, you have a certain amperage for the diameter of the rod you're welding for what you want to do. And I remember saying to Jack, there's no numbers on here, Jack. Shouldn't that be a 220 amps or whatever it was for that 3.5 mil rod and blah blah blah. And I remember he turning around to me. It's something stuck with me all my life. He said, "You may be able to tell me how to weld, son." He said, "But I can show you how to weld." And I think that's the difference today. There's so many fucking experts who've learned it from a book, but stick them in a comms room or stick them behind a PC, and they wouldn't know where to start. It's okay. It's okay having that knowledge. It's the application of it that then goes beyond. And as I say, it's one of the reasons why I came off Twitter, because
it's full of dicks. It's kind of what we talked about with Dave Kennedy, isn't it? Like when we were saying, like, we asked him why he thought there was so much military crossover between, like, people coming from the military into cyber, and he was saying because you have to have those skills of thinking on your feet and just fucking doing it, like just getting stuck in and being like, here's the problem, I've got to fix it now. Like, I haven't got a book that can tell me what the fucking answer is. I've got a 0-day attack happening and I need to fucking do something about it.
It's all very well knowing how to read the playbook. It's a very different thing dealing with the playbook when you've got 400 investors shouting at you and 4 million users shouting at you. And
I agree.
The world, but you and I, Ian, we grew up in a very different environment to youngsters today, and even to an extent, Amy, you as well. It wasn't as bad perhaps as it is now, but I mean,
I was only born in 1989. You were all...
you keep saying that. Don't keep reminding us how old we are.
Yeah. 1980. I'm not even going to think about why. Actually, fun times.
Yeah.
I need to do one of those moments.
Scooby-Doo moments from Waynesville.
So, but we grew up. We went out. We did stuff. You did stuff that you knew you shouldn't do. And as a result of that, you learned how to make sure you didn't get into trouble either physically or any other way. I should not be climbing this building and breaking into that window. So because I shouldn't be doing it, I need to make sure that I get away with it. So I learned how to do it safely, if such a thing exists. But that doesn't exist anymore. So young people now are thrown into situations where they're not.
I'm quite glad that Margot's not going to go out fucking scaling buildings thinking she's fucking Spider-Man. Like it sounds like you were doing.
But why? Because actually, my kids said to me once. They must be like 6, 7 years old. Can we climb the shed? And I said, well, if you think you can climb the shed, give it a go. But you've obviously got to get down from the shed as well. Where's the harm? What's the very worst that can happen? And don't tell me because I'm well aware what the worst that can happen. But they learn what is achievable and what isn't achievable. And I think
I've got no issue with stuff like that. Yeah, I never went out and fucking climbed sheds or all like that.
Bet you did, Ian.
Don't know what you're missing. You don't know what you're missing, honestly.
I've got a shed.
Climbing sheds and jumping off the top was the highlight of my fucking childhood, to be quite honest.
Or as you realise that the roof is bowing in a way that it wasn't 5 minutes beforehand. But there was loads of stuff we did. There was I remember so clearly a rope swing that you jumped on, and then another dozen people would jump onto it as well, and you'd be in the middle and you weren't hanging on to anything. You were just compressed, and oh my god, so many things could have gone so horribly wrong. But people looked out for each other. Older kids looked out for younger kids. If something went wrong, everyone knew instinctively what to do. And yes, people got hurt, and I'm not saying that that's a good thing, but the understanding of risk and learning how to deal with risk and manage safely, I think, is missing, and I think that's a real shame. And I think
and I think also as well, we're partly to blame for that as well, because we wrap our kids up in cotton wool. I know even at 19, I still worry about my son and stuff like that, and I've just got to let him get on with his life, and I've just got to let him live it, and I've just got to let him have the experiences that I had, and so he can learn from that type of stuff. And I want him to. I want him to have all of that stuff. But also there's still that part of me that thinks, oh, what's the worst that can happen? And, and things like that. But I don't think, actually, I'm not blaming future generations, by the way. I'm not saying that they're not tough or they're not resilient, or I'll take that back a little bit. I think there's a resilience that is missing in future generations, because I think there's lots of get out of jail free cards where they don't have to take responsibility for certain things. And I think that's one of the key learning factors, is take responsibility for shit, own up when you've done stupid shit, put your hand up, take the rap that's coming for it, and move on and learn from it. I think too often now, people want to look and point coming back to the weakest link, right? People want to point the responsibility to other people because they're afraid of taking it. I remember in my football career, one of the first things I ever learned from old pros was to put my hand up for mistakes I made. And I made a lot of them. I was just, sorry, that was my mistake. And you get on and you learn, and they're there to help you, and they're there to help you become a better player and stuff like that, you know? So but I also do feel for kids nowadays, because there's so much, it's so different. There's a different ethos to growing up. It's more insular. There's more virtual kind of worlds that they inhabit that we don't fully understand because we didn't grow up in them, you know? And I think sometimes when I'm like, go out and meet people and go out and do this and go out, actually, that's not in kids' kit bag to do nowadays, you know.
The difficulty nowadays is that if you make a mistake, it's usually online, and you don't ever get to forget that mistake because it's there all the time. Whereas when you guys were younger, if you made a mistake, then
careful where you go with this, Amy.
If you made a mistake, it's in real life, and you just, I don't know, you've overstepped the mark with your mate, calling him a dickhead or whatever. You've said I'm sorry, and then you move on from it. But if you've written it down on the fucking internet, people retweet it, and then fucking someone brings it up again in a year's time, and blah 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 blah, and it like this shit never goes away. And I think that's probably where, or like if you do make a mistake online, people fucking pile on you, and it's people that you don't even fucking know. It's not like everyone knows about it, and I think that's probably where people don't want to admit that they've made mistakes and things like that because of those kind of reactions that you get.
Yeah. That is one of the reasons why I came off Twitter, the pylon mentality, because I got so fed up of saying to people, listen, if you want to pile on, I don't mind that. Come and meet me in fucking real life and see if you pile on then, right? See if you're happy to pile on and take the piss then when a 6'4" angry Scouser is standing in front of you, you know, because so many people get brave over the internet and on keyboards and stuff like that, and they want to make other people's lives a misery because of it. I don't know why. I really don't know why, because, you know, I was taught when I grew up, if you say something wrong, you can't get yourself out of it, be ready to take a smack in the mouth, right? Because that was the way it was dealt with. That was the way it was dealt with. And I'm not saying violence is the answer. It's partially the answer. I'm not saying violence is the answer. And I'm not saying that you should go and beat up on people and stuff like that, but there's consequences for actions. And what the problem is nowadays online, there's no consequences for the actions. There's no consequence for somebody being an arsehole. And I always think my yardstick is, if I wouldn't say it to somebody's face, I'm not going to say it online.
Mm-hmm.
It's really simple. So I try and give them that respect, you know.
And I disagree slightly, and I think there are consequences online, but the problem is that the consequences are so accelerated or enhanced over the situation. Because as you say, in real life, you piss somebody off, you get a dirty look, you might get a smack, you move on, you deal with it, you settle it. But on virtual life, you can get away with stuff forever, and then suddenly it becomes a huge situation. Suddenly you are in court for something you've said, which rightly or wrongly is way beyond where it needed to have been. But there's no middle ground. There's that and there's that, and all of this stuff is done in sort of anonymously.
That's easy for you to say.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree when you can track somebody down. But you know, if it's a soccer account or stuff like that, you know, there are no consequences for that. Social media companies don't do enough to stop that type of stuff. You know, and I do agree with privacy and all that type of stuff as well. But I also agree with being a decent human being, right? And treating people the way you'd like to be treated, and not just sending horrible, hateful speech and messages to celebrities because they've missed a penalty at the Euros and stuff like that. It's It's absolute nonsense, right? You know,
Yeah.
but for those that you can track down, yes, there definitely are consequences. You're right, Rob.
I don't think it's even just like hateful speech to each other though. Like, so one of our mutual friends, Ian, posted some stuff on LinkedIn, and then some guy who's like retired, his job title on LinkedIn is like retired cyber exec. But trolls are all the time, and I'm like, why are you writing this stuff? Like, she posted something about the speed, like internet attacks happening at the speed of light, and then all she got from this guy was a response like, well, actually, if it goes through a router, then that's not actually the speed of light, is it? You know, just trying to undermine whatever it is that she's written. Why?
Yeah.
Why do people feel the fucking need to do it?
But
yeah,
but these people exist in real life. I mean, I've often talked about how the whole social media stuff doesn't sit comfortably with me, and I talk about how if I go into a pub, I will sit in the corner of the pub with my back to the wall and I'll talk to the person in front of me. And I sure as hell aren't going to stand up on the table and shout out my opinions to everyone in the pub. There are people who will do that. So on LinkedIn, on Twitter, I'm much the same. I will quietly sit at the side of a conversation, and if I think I've got something to add, rarely, I'll add it. But there are people who you will be having a quiet conversation in a pub, and they will from the other side of the room correct you. And you're like, what's going on? We have no interest in this. Go away, leave us alone. But you can do that much easier in real life than you can on LinkedIn, because as soon as you respond, they're like, whoa, you just don't want to be put corrected. What?
Well, actually, you say there's not people who want to do that. Unfortunately, I've embarked on a stand-up career, so it means I've got to do that shit now, right? I've got to come up with an opinion. I don't actually come up with an opinion; they are opinions, right? And it's kind of my confused brain as a middle-aged man who doesn't get shit, and I am a middle-aged man who doesn't get shit, right? And I'm quite willing to accept that I'm a dinosaur in things, that I have a different view of the world, but I also like to think I'm a kind person who will only ever poke fun of myself in situations I find myself in, rather than the 80s comics of the comedians and stuff like that who were poking fun at everybody else, you know. And it's really intriguing, you know, because I can stand up and talk about security till the cows come on, throw any topic at me whatsoever, I'll talk about it. It might not be an authority on it, but I'll have an opinion on it, and I have no problem doing that. But when you stand up in front of people and those people are looking at you thinking, go ahead, dickhead, make me laugh, it's a totally different prospect altogether, you know. It really strips you bare of stuff, and you really find out whether you're any good at that witty type of stuff or not, or whether people just think you're a bit of an arsehole.
So you've taken us in this direction, Ian. What did make you decide to go stand up?
Really to improve my presentation skills and to understand the anatomy of a joke. Not his. I understand setup and punchline, right? But to understand kind of how you get there and what the vehicles are for getting you there, and how you structure it. Because I always had an idea at the back of my mind that I wanted to take stand-up into awareness training, because I think it's a different progression again. And it's something that I'm doing now, is for on-site awareness training, is offering more of a stand-up routine around different topics that people can get engaged in, rather than listening to the boring mandatory training that comes out every year that nobody pays attention to, right? And even encouraging people to get involved and heckle and all that type of stuff, because I'm maybe even doing it in stand-up venues for people, so you can get away from that not safe for work element, where you're in a stand-up club, but it's for that corporate, and you're going to do that of an evening, and there's beers and stuff like that, and everybody could just have a little bit of fun and let the hair down. So it's actually that's what kicked it off. And to be quite honest, it was always an itch I wanted to scratch. It was always something that I thought I wouldn't mind having a go at, you know, because you know, the other scouser who kind of does it is John Bishop, and he's really good at it, right? And John and I played for the same football team years ago at different times, right? John and I trained together at a point, but he wasn't John Bishop then. He was just a normal lad who, you know, so there's kind of certain crossovers and itches that I want to scratch, and also as well, it pushes you out your comfort zone. Like I said, I can talk about security till the cows come home, but it's pushing you out your comfort zone, and it's making you think about how to deliver. You know, I've got a joke going around in my head at the moment, right, about passwords, right, and how they're shittily conveyed in normal awareness training about you wouldn't share your underpants, so why share passwords? Who's sharing fucking underpants? Who actually shares? Who's the pervert who goes, do you know what, mate? What I'm fed up of are these pants I've got on here. Can I try yours on? No, you fucking can't, weirdo. So I've got that kind of idea of, you know, and that's the type of stuff that I think would work well in stand-up for awareness, to get people involved in it, you know, and it just helps cement it on a different level as well.
I'm feeling very exposed.
Is that because you just took your underpants off, or?
Always goes commando.
If only they were mine. I'm not getting up from this desk.
Please don't. Please do not. Maybe. Well, you're gonna have to edit this bit out now, Rob. How long have we got left?
I don't know. Now, we're pretty much at an hour. So okay. Let we go a little bit more.
Okay, cool.
We need to get a
final thought of Ian, yeah.
We do need to get final thoughts out of Ian, definitely.
So at this point in the podcast, Ian, we usually ask our guest for their final thought. But as you are now, you know, a fully fledged stand-up comedian, would you like to give us a final joke instead?
A final joke, a final thought. I do something in my recent set that people may have seen. I talk about turning 50. I talk about turning 50 in lockdown, and it dawning on me that I need to grow up. I need to grow up because I'm not a responsible adult. And actually, what you see before you is a 6'4" lazy man child. So to kind of expand my maturity, I thought I'd get behind the cause, and I did some research on Google. And by research, I mean page one, because there's three types of people who go to page two: paedophiles, terrorists, and professors doing proper research, right? So nobody else needs to go beyond page one. And it threw up three different options. And the first option was deforestation of the Amazon. Did you know, for instance, that there's an area the size of 4 football pitches that's mown down every 3 minutes because of deforestation, which probably explains why the South Americans are so good at football. And therefore, if nothing else, we need to stop this shit so we can have a fair go of future World Cups. And then the second option was the NSPCC. Wonderful cause, great charity, kids are the future. But they didn't like my suggestion for an annual campaign to help kids, you know, which was, I shouldn't have to tell you twice. So they frowned at that. It was a bit tepid. It was a bit tepid, the reception I got for it. And to add insult to injury, as I left the room, they turned around to me and said, and the Rolf Harris vibe isn't working for us either. So the final thing, and it's a cause I can definitely get behind, is climate change. And by get behind, I don't mean speed up, because, you know, I don't know if you're like me, but I'm fed up of fucking kids and celebrities, Z-list celebrities telling me how much we need to change the planet. We all know. I don't want the planet rise in temperature by a degree, because I tan like a fucking burns victim. I really do. Honestly, people pass by me on holiday and take photos of me on the sunbed just so they can match that terrible burnt shade of pink on their feature wall back home. You know, Farrow and Ball have a paint in my honour called Scouse Salmon. So essentially, that's kind of a couple of minutes of the stand-up I do. So just all taking fun of myself and poking fun at myself, and actually proving I can write comedy as well. Hopefully proving that I can write comedy. So there you go.
DVD is available in the link below.
Indeed. I'm available for weddings, bar mitzvahs, and funerals.
Perfect. Well, thanks so much for coming to chat to us, Ian. It's been a pleasure. I don't think I've laughed more than on this podcast. So there we go.
It's been wonderful. Very nice to meet you, Ian. Thank you very much.
And you, Rob. I've really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. Thank you for having me on.